these videos. So with all that said, let's start looking at the first field, which is our horizontal line tool. So once you come into the editor, what you'll see down the left-hand side here is a section called Field Setup. And if we click on this little arrow here to add a new field, we'll see these lists of options. Now, these differ depending on what type of fields you have selected. So, like I say, they're fairly similar across the board, but there are some slight differences, and we'll cover each of those off as we go. So let's go with the first option, like I said before, which is our horizontal line tool. Now, we use the horizontal line tool to create the coloured elements on the page. So this will be your coloured backgrounds, coloured squares, any of those different coloured elements that you'd be applying the agent's brand colours to. Right. So the first options that we're going to come to are these two at the top here, which is left and top. Now, these two options you use to position your elements on the page. Now, this is true of any of the different fields you might select. And this is, like I say, predominantly how you move elements around the page. So just to give you a little bit of an understanding on this, this template that you have here basically works on an X and Y axis, with the top left corner being 0.0. So as you increase left, your element will move across the page. And as you increase top, the element will move down the page. So this is really how we manipulate and move these pieces around. Now, there's going to be quite a few of these fields to cover off, so there'll be plenty of time for me to sort of grasp how this works. But for now, let's just set our item as 0, 0, just so we can see how it appears on the page. Link 2 will maybe cover off at a later stage, just quite an advanced option. Not really something we need to worry about for just creating basic templates for now, so we can ignore this field for now. Width and height, pretty self-explanatory. So, like I say, if we're dealing with square design elements, let's give ourselves, just for the purpose of just displaying this, a nice simple 200 by 200. Well, let's just make it a tad smaller than that. Let's go for 100 by 100. In this, we've got a nice square, and now we're going to look at giving the field a label. So again, this is never really visible for the front end user. So this is predominantly for you being able to identify which field it is you're going to work on and how to find them. As some of these more complex designs come about, the more and more that you add these fields, the longer and longer this list is going to be. So giving yourself a nice accurate description of what that field is will help you find them later down the line. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and call this demo square, just so we can see that for now. The DB field, again, this will fill in automatically. This is a very technical field. It's not something you need to worry about, more for the developer side of things. And editable. So in the front-end designer, or in the front-end template editor, when an agent would come to edit their templates, you can make certain fields locked off, if you like. So that would mean that the field is there and apparent on the page, but the agent can't design it, can't make any changes to it. So this is good for locking off certain text fields, or maybe you have certain design elements that need to be redrawn in, but you don't necessarily want the agent to edit. So again, I'll give you some examples of how this works down the line. For now, though, let's just go ahead and add our element. And we can see here, because we've set this to 0 and 0, that our item starts here, and we now have our 100 point height by 100 point width. Let me just go ahead and just show you if I was to move this, let's say 50 points to the left, how that's now moved over, and let's say 150 points down. And you can see now that how that's starting to move around the page based on how I'm setting these. And of course, you have to click update to move that around every single time. So that's just a good idea there on just how that works and how that looks. So what I'm going to do now is actually just jump in and give you a sort of real world or a real case scenario on how you're going to use this and apply this in order to start actually creating the postcard template that we've been looking at since the start of these videos. So bear with me one moment, let me just clear this away, and we'll actually start from scratch and actually start applying real design elements. Okay, so now I have our postcard design in front of me here, and I'm just going to start at the top here and start with our blue and pink borders at the top of the design here. Like I did before, let's head over to the fields panel down the left-hand side here, and let's just go ahead and add or select our horizontal line tool, because that's what we're going to need here. I'm going to set the left to 0 and top to 0. That way our item is going to start in the top left corner. Let's come down and set our width. Now, the thing to point out about the width and height and the positioning tools is that there is no real science to it. You will get used to estimating the widths and heights, and maybe estimating the lefts and tops to position those elements and size those elements on the page. The more and more you use it. So the more you use it, the more comfortable you will become with it, and the quicker you will become. One of the main rules one of the main recommendations I give you is to always keep your design handy when you're doing this stuff, because you will be constantly flicking back between the two, making comparisons and just making sure that things look right. So, what I will do in this instance here is I'll just estimate this to be, let's say, roughly 300 for the width, and the height I'm just going to set to 20. Okay, field label, I'm just going to go ahead and just call this top blue. As you can see, I've done quite a few of these in the past, so top blue bar is actually already an option I have there. And for the field description, we'll just call that the same. Again, these aren't apparent to the front end users, so these really are just for you when you're editing. Let's come down to this field here, editable. Yes, we want that to be editable. Let's just go ahead and add that there. Okay, now we've got our bar there. Let's have a quick look at our design. It does actually look a little bit thicker than what we need there. It's maybe not quite as wide either. So before we go ahead and start making any adjustments, what I want to draw your attention to is, if I scroll down here, is a section here called PDF Preview. Now, while having your design open for you to reference is going to be beneficial, the PDF Preview button will start to become your new best friend when you're making these edits. And the reason for that being is when I click PDF Preview, what you're going to see there is what is effectively the print-ready PDF that is generated by the site. Now, this is the final product that the agent will be downloading to send to their printers. So this really is, the final say in what you're doing. So it's all very well and good if your design looks okay inside the template editor, but if it's not looking right inside the PDF, then you need to start making some changes and adjustments, because of course, if the agent was to send this off to the printer, it's not going to be any good for them. But as we go ahead making more and more changes, you'll see how I use this and how this is becoming referenced more and more. So the first thing I'd like to draw your attention to is the fact that I set this element to use 0, 0 as our starting point. Now, what that's actually done there is actually put this in line with our trim marks, but it hasn't actually given us any bleed on the product. So what we need to do is actually compensate for that bleed. So while I set this to 0, 0 to give us this starting point, you'll see there on the PDF, no bleed. So how are we going to adjust for that? And we're going to adjust for that simply by setting these as minuses. And what that's going to do is actually draw the element back beyond our 0 starting point. So if I give this a left of 0.8 and a top of, -8, and a top of -8. So that's -8 left, -8 top. Let's update that. And you can see there, that's now dragged the element back out the page. Let's go ahead and click PDF Preview again. And we'll see now that we actually have roughly 3 millimeters of bleed on that item there. Now, good rule of thumb, when you're starting with elements like this in the top left-hand corner, if you do need to give them bleed, -8 is generally is the rule you want to go for to give you that good starting point. The rest of it, as we go around the item, you can actually do it visually. Again, it's one of those things that you become sort of more second nature to you the more and more that you do these. Back into the actual template editor again. Now, by actually making that adjustment, it's actually thinned the line out quite well. Now, if I look at my original design, that's not looking too far off, actually. I'm quite happy with that. The only issue we have now is that it's not quite wide enough. So let's go ahead and we're just going to increase the width of that to about 20. So, not 3,200, 320. That's better. Let's click update on that. And you can see there that that's moved our element across the page slightly. I don't think that's too far off. I'm happy with that. So let's say we're going to go ahead and go with that. So that's our first item dropped in there. When you add these elements to the template itself, they're not always necessarily going to be in the correct color that you want to add them in. So in this case here, you can see this line here is black. But what we want it to be is we actually want it to be the same as our design here. So with the design open in whichever software you're using, whether it's Illustrator or InDesign, if you click on the element, you should be able to find the color breakdown for that particular element like this. Now, for every single field that we have inside here, we actually have a contextual settings bar that appears through the top here. Now, you would access that by coming to the field that you'll want to make your edits to and clicking on the pencil, just appears next to this X here. And again, we'll use this a lot more throughout this video. But by clicking on that pencil, we'll open up contextual settings bar for that field. And we're just going to go ahead now and apply our color settings to this field. So let me just go back and let me just drag my window across the side here, just so we can see everything a bit better. Okay, so what we need to do first is enter our CMYK values. So we can find those down the side here. So what I can see there is we have a C value of 100, a magenta value of 100, a yellow value of 31 and a black value of 22. So let's add those in. And then I need to grab my hex value as well, which is used for the RGB output. This is used for the actual web view while the user is making their changes. And of course, the CMYK value is used for the item if and when it goes to print. So let's paste those in here. These are the settings, again, spot colors and tins. If a spot color is used, or if it's needed for that particular item, this is where you'd enter that value. However, I think when we're sending most of these basic items to print, I don't think that's going to really be necessary in this case here. Let's go ahead and click update on that. And we'll see now that our item has changed to blue here. So these are the basic settings. Now in the top right hand corner here, you'll see an extras tab. So if I click on the extras tab, you'll see some more specialist settings that are probably unique to that particular item you're looking at. So in this case here, we have a custom color option. So ticking this will allow the user to change the color of that particular item. If you wanted to leave this item locked off with a set color, you'd simply leave this. So for the purposes of this, we want the agents to be able to change the color on these in order to make them their own brand colors. So we're going to go ahead and tick that. And once that's ticked, just make sure you come down to the bottom here and click update. So again, what I'm showing you here is going to be true of any time that you come to use this horizontal line bar. So not just for this item here, but for any major design elements that you're creating using this, all of these rules will become true. Right, so with that all said, I think that is the first item done there. Let's just scroll down and give it a quick preview and just make sure everything's looking okay there. Yeah, everything's looking fine. Great, let's go ahead and look to create our pink bar next to that. Okay, so moving on to our pink bar through the top here. Now, unfortunately, there isn't a duplicate field option in this system. However, once you've created one field, the next field will adopt some of those settings. So if you are working on elements close to each other, you can sort of use this in order to springboard the positioning and give yourself a little bit of a boost in how long it takes you to work. So as you can see here, by coming down and selecting horizontal line, you'll see that my width and height and the previous positioning has all been brought across from the last element I made. So while this might not always be of benefit, you will find some elements like the width and height we've set here can be used to, like I say, springboard you and the work you're doing. So looking at my previous item here, bear with me one at the moment, we know that the width is 320. So if the width is 320 and that brings my item here, then by setting the position of this, setting the left option to 320, now means that my item is going to start at this marker here. So you can, by sort of using those kind of logics, you can work out where roughly to start and where to go. Now we know we want the top set to -8 because that creates the bleed outside of the item. So we can leave those items set as they are. The height, again, we can leave as it is because we want that to mirror the height of our previous item. But the width is going to be a little bit too long. Now, for the purposes of this video, I'm going to leave that as it is so I can show you what the result is and then how we can sort of work that back and fix that. So Description field, top blue bar. Let's go ahead and call this top pink bar, so we can just keep those all working together. And again, oh, sorry, no, I put that into the database field. That was a mistake. Let's copy that out. That wants to go into our field label field there. That's better. And again, editable. Yes, we do want this to be editable, so we'll leave that as it is. Let's go ahead and add that new field. Okay, so now we can see our items being added there. Now, it hasn't quite lined up as I was expecting to there, but that's not to worry. We can come over here and simply adjust that. Now, before we adjust that, let's get the colors applied to this, just so we can see the differentiation between the two items on the page. So like we did before, let's come back to our design. Let's cancel out of this and let's highlight our pink bar and open up our color editor palette there, and let's get our different colors applied. So when doing this, what I would recommend you do is just make sure you come to the item and just click that black arrow there, just the black pencil item, just to make sure that you do have the correct contextual menu open. Because if you do go ahead and change the colors and you change the colors on the wrong item, it can start to get a little bit frustrating. So let's come in here. I'm just going to update our CMYK value based on what we have over there. So that's 1 on the cyan, 21 on magenta, 15 on yellow, and 0 on black. And copy our hexadecimal value there, paste that in, click update, and now we have our pink bar there. Perfect. Right, so let's drag this back across here. Now we just need to move this slightly over to the left because it's gone a bit too far over there. I'm not quite sure what's happened there, but let's just set that back about -10 and see how that looks. Let's update that. There we go, that looks about right. Now if I add a couple of points to that, just to see if we've got any overlap. Yes, we have a little bit of overlap there, maybe a little bit more. Okay, we can see now, we just tweak that back a tad. Oh, a little bit of a white line there. Let's just bring that back one more. Perfect. Okay, now we've got that closed up there. That's looking good. Let's move down and let's just go to our PDF preview again just to see how this is looking. Okay, so we're lined up. We've got the same amount of bleed top there. That's looking fine, but we've got way too much width on this that was left over from the previous field. And as you can see there, that's way too much bleed going on there. So much, in fact, that we've actually covered up the trim mark. So we need to get that fixed. So let's close all these tabs that we've got opening up here. Every time we click on that button, it gives us a new tab. Now let's just go ahead and mess around with the width of this. So 312, oh, no, sorry, that's our left. Let's come down to the width, 320. So there's no real way of gauging how far over we are. So let's just take a little bit of a guess on this and move it down to say 380. And let's just take a look at that. So that's 40 points back. Okay, now we haven't come into the design here, so we've still got a bit more excess. Let's go and view our PDF preview again. Okay, that's way too much still. Let's set it back to 360. And take another look at this. Again, way too much. Let's get a bit heavy-handed with this and just see exactly how far over we might have gone with this. Okay, so 300 has brought us back roughly where we need to be. Actually, we're not a million miles out there. Let's maybe move that back down to about, let's call that 306 and just see how that is. We don't need to come back too far there. Let's view our PDF preview again. I think that's gone the other way. Let's just bring that back down a little bit more. Let's call it 3196. Sorry, 296. And that's looking about right there. Perfect. Okay, so we've got our bleed equal around that border there, and we've got our two items applied. So let's just come back to our design again. So going back to our contextual menu, let's make sure we go up to extras again. Now we want to ensure that we've got enable custom color turned on. Again, this is going to allow the agents to actually adjust their colors. Let's update that. So that really is how to adjust horizontal lines on the design. Also, viewing it in the PDF preview gives you an idea. Let me just snap forward and give you an idea as to how this looks on the front end to the user, just so you can get an idea of what it is we've actually done there. In one of the previous videos, building your online storefront, I showed you how to create the items that the user views on the front end in your shop. So now we've actually got a template there with some items on. We can actually run through that process now all the way up to the template stage. So from the top, if we go into our products, let's select our postcard item here. And of course, we're working on the postcard with an agent photo. Let's jump into that and select the template that we've just been working on and customize. Now we can see our template actually on the front end here with the fields that we created. Now, if I hover my mouse over these items, you'll see that my cursor turns to a pointer. And if I go ahead and click on that blue element there, we'll see a color palette item appear here. And if I click on that, we'll now see all the different color items available for me to select from. So if I go ahead and select a red there, let's go ahead and click on my pink, and we'll select a grey to go next to that. And now we can see how we can actually start to manipulate and change those items in the front end editor. There is another video called Managing Custom Colors, where I actually show you how to change and manipulate these color items or these color options in the back end. So of course you will want to apply the agent brand colors to this system, therefore, allowing you to control the brand and the colors that the agents have to select. At the moment, these are just a default color palette that we have set. So if you want to know how to change these colors, go ahead and watch that video. But yes, that really does cover off the horizontal line tool.